morning.
Good morning.
And welcome. Let us, on behalf of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee, warmly welcome the officials from the Ministry of Finance, Investments Division, the Office of the Prime Minister, and the Urban Development Corporation of Trinidad and Tobago, UDeCOTT. My name is Senator Wade Mark, and I'm the chairman of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. The Committee on Public Accounts Enterprises has a mandate to consider and report to the House on the following: the audited accounts, balance sheets, and other financial statements of all enterprises that are owned or controlled by or on behalf of the state. The Auditor General's report on any such accounts, balance sheets, and other financial statements. And finally, whether policy is carried out efficiently, effectively, and economically, and whether expenditure conforms to the authority which governs it. The purpose of this meeting of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee is to examine the audited accounts, balance sheets, and other financial statements of the Urban Development Corporation of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial years 2014 and 2015. The committee is desirous of hearing the challenges being faced by the key stakeholders at UDeCOTT in an attempt to determine some of the possible solutions to these challenges. The role of the committee is to help the Urban Development Corporation of Trinidad and Tobago to improve its delivery of services in an efficient, effective, and economic manner. This virtual meeting is being broadcast live on the Parliament's Channel 11 and Radio 105.5 FM and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Participants are advised that their microphones should remain muted until recognized by the chairman. Let me take this opportunity to invite members of our committee to introduce themselves. Members?
Good morning, everyone. Chair, through you, I would like to introduce myself to the committee, Member Renuka Sagram Singh Suklal. It's a pleasure to be in the presence of all these esteemed bodies here this morning, OPM, the Investment Division, and members of the UDeCOTT, And of course, I do look forward to a very productive meeting this morning. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Other members, please.
Good morning, everyone. Amrita Devnarai, member.
Good morning, all. Fitzgerald Haynes, member.
Good morning, all. Laurella Zamali Singh, member.
Yes, other members? Okay. May I at this time invite representatives from the Investments Division of the Ministry of Finance, the Office of the Prime Minister, and the Urban Development Corporation of Trinidad and Tobago to introduce themselves.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, Chairman and members of the Public Accounts and Enterprises Committee, Head of the Public Service, Office of the Prime Minister, Acting CEO, and officials of UDeCOTT, and members of the listening and viewing audience. My name is Michelle Durham-Kisoon, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance. I have with me this morning Ms. Muriel Alfred James, Deputy Director of Budgets, Ms. Sharon Mohammed, Acting Director, Agro-Base and Manufacturing Services Sector Investments Division, and Ms. Malini Gangapasad, Acting Business Analyst in the Investments Division. It's a pleasure for us to be here this morning. Thank you, Chairman.
Morning. Good morning. My name is Maurice Sweet. I'm the Permanent Secretary to the Prime Minister. And I have with me Mr. Stephen Gardner, the Project Management Advisor in the Office of the Prime Minister. Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jade Brown, Director, UDeCOTT. And with me in the room, as you can see, I have a number of individuals. I'll ask them to introduce themselves. Starting with the CEO.
Hi, good morning. My name is Tamika Charles Phillips, the Chief Executive Officer, Acting of the Urban Development Corporation of Trinidad and Tobago Limited. I'll take the opportunity to also introduce the rest of the team. We have the Divisional Manager of Finance, Mr. Burton Andre Hinkson. We also have Ms. Brenda John, who is our Senior Manager, Human Resources. And we have Ms. Siobhan Murray, who is our Monitoring and Compliance Officer.
Yes, thank you all for being here. And maybe I can begin by asking a few preliminary questions, and that I will ask Minister Hines, who may have to leave in a short while, to follow with any areas he would like to raise with UDeCOTT before he has to attend to another engagement. I would like to ask the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance the following question, just for clarification. Permanent Secretary, could you share with this committee what is the oversight arrangement in place for UDeCOTT, and how does this differ from the oversight in place for other ministries and government agencies, and why?
Chairman, thank you for the question. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to explain the difference. Urban Development Corporation of Trinidad and Tobago was incorporated in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on December 20th, 1994, and commenced operations on January 13th, 1995. The principal activity of the company is to oversee rural and urban development throughout Trinidad and Tobago on behalf of the government. UDeCOTT was designated as special purpose state enterprises in the Control of Accounts Circular number 12, dated November 9th, 2005. This was in keeping with the 2006 Minister of Finance budget presentation that announced that a number of state enterprises have been established under the Companies Act as limited liability companies for the purpose of executing certain projects which fall under the portfolios of certain ministries and departments, with a view to fast-tracking the implementation process. These projects are funded under the Infrastructure Development Fund, which was established under Section 43(2) of the Exchequer and Audit Act, Chapter 6901. Under the circular referred to above, the Minister of Finance stated his intention, which was subsequently carried out, to appoint relevant permanent secretaries or heads of departments, or in the case of the Tobago House of Assembly, the chief administrator, as administering officers for the projects under their control, which are funded by the Infrastructure Development Fund. The officers so appointed become personally and pecuniarily responsible for the funds under their portfolio. So, it is the permanent secretaries and heads of departments under whose purview the projects fall are the officers accountable for the funds utilized for these projects. Chairman, that is the essential difference between the monitoring of UDeCOTT and other state enterprises.
Yeah, Permanent Secretary, could you share a copy of that circular with our committee?
Yes, Chairman, I am happy to share that circular with members of the committee.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Could you, all right, thank you very much for your clarification. I'd like to ask UDeCOTT, and maybe the CEO can address this question. Now, we know that UDeCOTT cited improving financial reporting as an objective between 2016 to 2020. Given that the company expects to submit its outstanding statements for 2017, 18, and 19 by the end of fiscal 2021, what measures will be put in place to ensure that the company abides by its target of 100% submission of financial statements and reports in compliance with the company's statutory and regulatory requirement? May I ask UDeCOTT to provide us with some clarification? Is UDeCOTT there?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. Well, with respect to the statements for 2017, 18, and 19, which we expect to have submitted by the end of fiscal 2021, the steps we have put in place is currently trying to appoint a new auditor to review those financial statements. We have one auditor completing 2016, and due to particular challenges that were experienced in meeting the targets, we have undertaken a process to identify a new auditor, and that is currently under review of the Ministry of Finance Corporation, SOL. By implementing that measure, we would then be in a position to have our financial statements brought fully up to date, so that from there on, we would be meeting our targets.
When do you anticipate that a decision will be taken to address the issue of a new auditor?
Chairman, through you.
Yeah. Speaking?
Yeah. Can I ask the PS to proceed?
Yes.
You're gonna go on that
Yes, Chairman. The
item.
UDeCOTT should receive that authorization shortly.
Okay. Madam PS,
Yes, Chairman.
can you provide us, that is the committee, with any possible direction as to how soon or within what time frame you anticipate that decision to be taken so that UDeCOTT could have their auditor on board to complete their financials for 17, 18, and 19. Any specific time frame you'd like to share with us?
Yes, Chairman. The decision has already been made, and they should receive their letter as soon as this meeting is concluded.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, PS.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Hines?
It really troubles me to intervene at this point, but I must, as I indicated to you previously, depart this meeting for our cabinet session, which is just on the cusp of starting.
Would you like to raise any questions before you leave?
Well, I have a series of them, but time would not permit. So I would, though prematurely, want to record my own observations and my own appreciation, notwithstanding some quirks, some imperfections, but I want to record, however prematurely, because I'm in departure, my observation that this entity has indeed made a major contribution to the development and the advancement of some of the national assets, including the heritage sites and so on, that we all can now boast of and enjoy. I would rather have come to that at the end of this, but I must, for the reasons I've stated, leave you now. I'm so regretful.
Yes, well, thank you very much for joining us, and do enjoy the rest of your day and have a productive meeting.
I thank you very warmly. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you. May I continue? And I'd like to ask UDeCOTT, maybe the CEO, in your 2016 to 2020 strategic plan, has the company been able to increase? You identify a target, I should say, and within that target, the company did indicate that they intend to increase the revenue and the profitability of its project management services by 5%. Can you indicate whether this level of profitability was achieved? UDeCOTT?
Yes, could you just give us 2 minutes to consult it? So long, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The response to that question, I would ask my Divisional Manager, Finance, to support in providing a response to that question.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman. Respond to that question. As you know, we have been trying our best to improve our profitability and viability as an enterprise. So what we have identified is, based on the project scope, we are looking at amending our project management fees to suit the complexity of each task. That will be brought forward through our continual the discussions and dialogue with our clients' ministries. Thank you.
Yeah, but could you be a little more clear? The company had set a target of 5% in terms of project management services, and that was to increase their level of profitability. What percentage has the company been able to achieve within its strategic plan for the period 2016 rather to 2020? Did you achieve 3%, 3.5%, 4%? Did you fall under the target that you set? I just want to get some clarification on that.
All right, thank you, Chair. I think what we could say is that we did not quite meet the target of the 5%. We have increased our projects. However, our project management fees are capped at about 4.5%. And given the nature and complexity of our projects, which is why the Divisional Manager of Finance would have been indicating that we may need to review such structures. If we review the project fees, we may be in a better place to meet the revenue targets. But at the cap right now, although we are expanding with projects, we are still having a little challenge in meeting that increase in revenue to project management fees.
Well, would you be so kind to put in writing what you have just indicated and also share with this committee what measures or other measures you intend to effect in order to realize this objective?
Yes, I am able and willing to do so.
Now, UDeCOTT also identified facilities management and land development as new areas of focus in your plan, that is your strategic plan for 2016-2020. Is it possible for you to provide us, UDeCOTT, disclose to us whether whether you were able to achieve that target of 5% annual increase in profitability of facility management, or even 5% increase in land development? Can you share with us?
Sure, just give us 30 seconds to consult. Thank you.
While UDeCOTT is confirming.
We are here. Yes, so with respect to the facilities management, currently we manage 15 facilities. So we are increasing revenue, but whether or not we have quite met that target, I would say no, because as you would have seen in our reports, we would have had some difficulty with the project management agreements. So there are some facilities for which they are still outstanding, which is hampering our ability to gather those fees. However, for the more recent ones, we were able to put some agreements in place. So we are meeting some targets, but we are still at the point of closing off some of the outstanding agreements so that we will be able to meet the targets as intended. So we are a little behind, but it is a work in progress. So we are getting there.
Could you once again put in writing those projects in terms of facility management and land development where you were able to achieve, let's say, your targeted figure of 5%, as well as those that you have not been able to realize that 5%. If you can detail for us the areas of facility management that you have been experiencing some challenges in, as well as in the area of land development. Can you put that in writing and submit to the Secretariat?
Sure, we will accommodate.
Now, the final area I'd like to raise before I ask my colleague Sagram Singh, Renuka, to get in or to join us, I'd like to ask UDeCOTT again the following. Another objective that you identified, UDeCOTT that is, in your strategic plan for the period 2016 to 2020 was to improve delivery of projects to meet standards, budget, for example, timeliness, as well as quality. In light of these targets, could you tell us, firstly, what percentage of projects were completed on schedule? UDeCOTT?
Can we have 1 minute just to identify the information? Yes, we are here, Chairman and team. Given the range of the question, we are asking whether we could submit that in writing. That way we will be able to identify the specific projects and give particular details. Because to answer that question without these projects identified is a little...
Okay. Well, could you put the following in writing for us? Firstly, what percentage of projects were completed on schedule? Secondly, what was the number of non-client initiated change orders experienced? How many serious accidents or fatalities occurred? Did the number of defects identified reduce by 25%? And was there a 10% reduction in the use of project contingency? You can put those in writing for us.
Sure. Could I just ask whether there is a time period that you wish that information to be presented for? As much as we are looking at 2014, 2015, do you want it for that period or do you want it brought up to current?
No, well, we are looking at 2014, 2015, but for us to understand your objectives for the period 2016 to 2020, you will probably have to deal with it on a more broad basis.
Thank you.
I'll now invite the member Renuka Sagram Singh, who has some questions for UDeCOTT. Mrs. Sagram Singh.
Thank you, Chair. Once again, good morning all. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. For the benefit of my colleagues in this committee, I'd like to take us to page 4 of UDeCOTT's submission as it relates to the issue of procurement. And for the benefit of Trinidad and Tobago, as we are all aware, public procurement is one of the most vital components of a country's public administration as it links the financial system with the economic and social outcomes. Now, that being said, my question posed to UDeCOTT this morning is, has an assessment of the procurement policy been conducted by senior management to determine whether the policy needs to be amended or updated? That's UDeCOTT's procurement policy.
yes, we have conducted a review of our policy to ensure that we are consistent and will be in compliance with the upcoming procurement regulations.
Okay, so if I take you now to part 1.3 of Appendix E, right? That is related to your submission. It lists value for money as one of the procurement objectives in that particular submission. Based on that Vermont, my question is the public, so based on the procurement policy, was a specific framework implemented to deliver best values for money in acquisition of property, plant, and equipment to ensure efficiency, accountability, and transparency? And maybe you could shed some light on that particular policy. This is part 1.3 of Appendix E. That's based on your submission.
And could you just repeat the question while we identify the section?
Yeah. So based on your procurement policy, was a specific framework implemented to deliver best value for money in acquisition of plant, machinery, equipment to ensure efficiency, accountability, and transparency?
Sure, we will respond shortly. I will take you to the point where we address that.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Yeah, unmute. Unmute? Are you hearing clearly?
Yes, I'm hearing.
Yeah, so guidance in responding to that question, in our responses submitted, if you go to page 13,
right,
where we indicated that we do have a quantity surveying unit, and we sometimes use independent quantity surveyors. So what we do then, we set budgetary allocations for each of our projects. So there's an assessment done. There's not an overarching framework, but we have our internal controls where we are able to assess what the market value is through our departments and sometimes independent consultants to ensure.
Okay, and for the record, and you may correct me if I'm wrong, I recall hearing you say that you all have already started to put measures in place to operationalize the public procurement legislation in anticipation of its proclamation, correct? Okay, excellent. For the benefit of my committee members, if we could now go to page 5 of UDeCOTT submission as it relates to strategic planning and strategic plans. Appendix F, I believe it is, deals with your strategic plan. Now, based on this particular submission, if you could kindly relate to this committee, what is the status of your strategic plan for the period 2021?
We currently have a draft strategic plan, which is under review by the board of directors.
Right. And how long your board would usually need to assess that plan, and is there a time frame relative to the rolling out of that plan?
Well, we certainly hope to have it, if not by the end of the month, certainly by the end of next month, so that it starts early in the year.
Okay, so for the record, there is a plan in place and you're just awaiting that approval. Fantastic. Now, relative to your said strategic plan, can you identify to this committee what key performance indicators were used by UDeCOTT to measure the progress of its strategic plan implementation for the period 2016 to 2020?
We would have had monthly reports submitted to the board of directors. I would say about 2018, 2019, early 2019, we would have developed what is called the strategic planning portal, which is an internal monitoring system. So the objectives were uploaded, and our executive could have indicated where we were with rolling it out. So there is an internal process, so we can.
Okay, because I had a question relative to if any sort of software, if UDeCOTT utilizes any sort of software to track, monitor, and execute its plans and initiative. Is that what you're referring to, that portal in specifically?
Yes, but it's the UDeCOTT developed portal. It was done in-house by our team, and that is what we use.
Okay, could you just shed a little more information relative to how that portal operates and how the information that is fed, and that is what the board then will use to guide and to determine whether they're going to sign off on a strategic plan? Is that how it works?
No, we're coming out of the last strategic plan. The objectives and the deliverables of each division would have been uploaded.
Right.
So the executive responsible for the areas would be able to go in and update on where they were or are with rolling out those particular initiatives. Coming out of that, the reports will then go to the board. So it's not the system itself that is being reviewed by the board, but the reports that are coming out would then go to the board in the respective reports of the divisional managers. So we will have a sense, the board will have a sense of where we are. And of course, that information will then feed into what we have in the draft. So there may be some that will be rolling over, some that will change based on where our mandates take us.
Okay, so if I may piggyback on what you said previously, so we're waiting that approval from the board relative to the strategic plan for 2021. In the absence of this confirmed plan, can you identify to this committee what is being utilized currently to govern the operations of UDeCOTT in light of that final, in light of the absence of that final 2021 strategic plan? It's a rollover from, if you could shed some light on that.
Well, some of the items would be rolled over, but also recall that UDeCOTT is guided by the mandates given by the clients. So what our activities are directly tied to what is required from us by the government of Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay, understood. Thank you. For the benefit of my committee members, if we could now go to page 6 of UDeCOTT's submission as it relates to the status of outstanding financial statements. I know Chairman would have touched some of those issues, but there are certain things that I want some clarity on. Now, I recall at page 6, it was indicated that the delay in submitting the audited financial statements was a result of the requisite documentation being handed over to the UFF Commission of Inquiry and the Anti-Corruption Investigation Bureau for the years 2008 to 2020. Now, UDeCOTT in its submission, as I said on page 6, went on to further say that it made a conscientious effort, and I would highlight that, a conscientious effort to rectify the completion of the audited exercises. Now, in this particular part of your submission, it stated that in June 2014, the financials for 2007 were approved and ratified. It goes on to say 2 years later, May 2016, the financials for the period ending December 31st to 2008 was also approved and ratified. There is also a submission that states then 3 years later, June 2019, the financials for the year 2009-2015 were also ratified and approved. Now, this comes out directly from your submissions, right? My question is, what are the reasons in particular for the 2-year gap from 2014 to 2016 in having the financials for 2007 and 2008 being completed, being done?
I will ask my divisional manager of finance to provide some support in providing that response.
Okay.
Good morning, member. Your question, as you rightly stated, one of our major challenges was collating the information that will be needed to complete an audit. Because of that, time passed. A lot of time was spent gathering and verifying and reconstructing the financial statements so that they were in a position to be audited. That unfortunately took some time, but we've been able to rectify that, as you see in the subsequent years, the in which we've been addressing our financials.
Okay, and I would imagine that there have been since then internal and processes strengthening of internal processes so that there's not a reoccurrence of this.
Yes, ma'am. That's been our overall goal.
Excellent. Now, coming out of that said, your submission on your financial statements, when did UDeCOTT, I want to know, when did UDeCOTT receive the documentation supporting financial transactions from the UFF Commission of Inquiry and the Anti-Corruption Bureau to conduct its audit following the completion of its investigation? When exactly did you all receive the documentation supporting financial transactions from that inquiry? You have any information relative to that?
Request a minute. Are you hearing?
Yes, I'm hearing.
But in order to gather the information for assisting with the financial statements, we were allowed to go to the station and make copies of certain documents, but we never received the documents that were taken as part of the UF Commission. We never received those documents back into our possession.
Okay. Okay. So what? So I'm still on the issue as it relates to your accounting and financial processes, right? What accounting software, if any, is used by UDeCOTT to ensure timely preparation of financial statements? Now, reference is made to page 7 of your submissions, and that was in your response to answer 6. Question 6, sorry.
Yes, so I will again ask the Divisional Manager of Finance for support in answering that question.
Thank you.
Good morning, I'm again. At that point for the 2014 and 2015, we were still in the early stages of our newly appointed software. It's called Microsoft Dynamics that came into effect in 2010.
Could you repeat that? Microsoft what?
It's called Microsoft Dynamics.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. It was implemented in 2010. So at that period, we were in period of uploading our balances and rolling it forward. So, and that currently is still the system we're using. We're using the updated version as of 2018.
And this particular software, is it licensed or we all purchased the software? It's under license or was it purchased, that software?
It's a Microsoft product.
Okay, all right. Now, still on the issue of your financials, in 2015, I noted there was a management letter at page 10. It's at page 10 of your submissions. Now, it was observed that there is a lack of appropriate financial reporting practices. Now, that was actually one of the management observances, I believe, right? It was therefore recommended that a thorough analysis of UDeCOTT's accounting balances be performed on a monthly basis to allow for follow-up action, and that financial accounting be done in accordance with international financial reporting standards, right? So as I said, you can refer to page 10 of your submissions, and there was a 2015 management letter, which I refer to, which made these particular statements. Based on that particular statement, my question is, what is the status of this recommendation as at January 2021? or even prior, let's say even for the year 2020?
We are trying to locate the exact spot. Our page 10 seems to have something different from your page 10. If you could just read the heading, under which heading, and we will just go to the relevant section.
Yes, Renuka?
Yes, Chair? Yes.
May I suggest that
of course,
upon the conclusion of the financial statements, that we probably pause and then ask Amrita to intervene?
Certainly, Chair. Certainly.
And then we will come back to you as we make a second round, okay?
Certainly, Chair. Certainly.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning again, everyone. I just have some follow-up question with respect to the questions that Ms. Sagram Singh Suklal would have already asked you all. In terms of the strategic plan, I saw in your submission on page 5, you all indicated that the strategic plan cost UDeCOTT $134,000 plus VAT. And that was a strategic plan as at 2016. Now, I know you indicated that the strategic plan is being updated. Is it that you all are hiring consulting services to update the plan?
No, that plan was drafted in-house.
Okay, so the cost of $134,000 is what exactly?
$134,400. That would have applied to the strategic plan for the period 2016-2020. But the draft plan for 2021 was prepared in-house.
So the initial plan was contracted out?
The development of the plan? Yes, we received support for that, and the tune of that was $134,400.
Okay. But what was the reason for engaging a consultant to conduct the internal strategic plan for UDeCOTT when we have a board of directors who are very well qualified and a team who's qualified and very versed in what the strategic direction of UDeCOTT is? Just for my clarification, what was the need to hire a consultant when, based on the CVs that I've looked at, there very well seems to be ample qualification within the team?
I'm Jade Brown, Director UDeCOTT. I think the reason we went that way is the board would have recently been given its instruments, and basically we needed a team to. You hear me?
Yeah, just repeat the first part of your response, yeah, please. I kind of broke up a little bit.
Okay, I'm saying that the board would have, at that time, the board would have recently been given their instruments. So we went the way of getting professionals, people who do this on a daily, to help guide the process so that we wouldn't be, because we wouldn't have been able to hit the ground running, so to speak, with regards to the strategic plan. So what we did is we brought in these consultants and they assisted us, kind of guided the process towards getting it done as quickly as possible so that we had it ready to implement over the time period.
Right, so hence the reason you all are in a position right now to update the strategic plan internally. Yeah?
That's right, yes, ma'am.
Okay, now another follow-up question with respect to the audited financial statements that Ms. Sagram Singh Suklal would have addressed. Now, I see in your statement on page 6, you indicated that the parties have since mutually agreed to conclude this agreement due to the challenges faced by KPMG in completing the audit in the timeframe required by UDeCOTT. Could you explain to us, forgive me if you already mentioned it, could you explain to us what were these challenges faced by KPMG that they weren't able to complete this audit in the time period desired by UDeCOTT?
there appear to be several staff shortages within UDeCOTT, not UDeCOTT, KPMG, and therefore to meet our mandates would have been a little difficult for them.
Mrs. Zionarine, could you unmute?
Apologies, Chair.
Yes, thank you.
I'm looking at procurement. Now, in your submission, you would have submitted Appendix G, and Appendix G gave a synopsis of the strengths and weaknesses of UDeCOTT. Now, I'm looking at the external stakeholders' comments on UDeCOTT's weaknesses, and I saw that when it came to procurement, they mentioned that the procurement process is not transparent. Procurement is weak in technical expertise, resulting in challenges, delays in procurement. And they also mentioned that there's an absence of standardized bidding for projects. It needs to be reformed. Could you elaborate on why such a comment would be made when we already asked questions about the internal procurement policy and collaboration with OPR, and it seems to have been updated and being addressed. However, we see that this comment is being made on the procurement process, the transparency of the procurement process, and the absence of standardized bidding documents for the projects.
Are you hearing clearly?
Yes, I am.
Right. Could you just take me to which page again, and then I'll take it from there?
Okay, so page 6, on page 6 of Appendix G.
Right. Okay, great. I'm with you. That would have been some of the weaknesses that would have been identified would have led to the development of the procurement policy that was approved in 2015. So that was really the stakeholders' view of the external stakeholders' view. But we have the procurement policy, which was approved in 2015 and which guides what we currently do.
So this stakeholder comment, this stakeholder mapping exercise was done prior to 2015?
Consultant would have been compiling was really based on discussions with the wider team. So they would have been expressing some of the comments that would have come into the company. So it was what is represented here is what the consultant would have obtained as the environment or the landscape that would have shaped what we now have in the 2016 to 2020. So the comments are not necessarily reflective of the current. It just represented the environment that was understood to be in place at the point in time.
Okay, so how frequently do you do internal stakeholder consultations and external stakeholder consultations?
Internal stakeholder consultations, but every quarter we have the staff meeting, the general staff meeting. We really were not able to have it as planned in 2020 given the constraints of the COVID-19 pandemic. And in terms of external, we don't have a formal process for stakeholder consultations on procurement. However, feedback we get during each procurement process may guide whether we need to strengthen our internal control or whether we are standing up to public scrutiny.
Okay, so then are there any plans to do any external stakeholder consultations anytime soon?
clearly? Just making sure. Yes?
Yeah.
Right. So in terms of the external stakeholder consultation, that is not formal in the sense that we will be convening stakeholder sessions. However, we have moved to the e-tender system, which allows even an increase in the transparency. And when we train the contractors, that is part of us informing them what our process is. And if they have any questions or queries, they raise it with us and we are able to deal with it. So it's not on a wide scale, but based on our tenders that we are rolling out, we do consult with our external personnel.
Right, and I asked that because there are several, just making sure I'm not on mute yet. So there are several weaknesses that, several comments that the external stakeholders highlighted with respect to payment challenges, communication, processes and procedures, knowledge and development of staff. So is it that you're saying that on an ongoing basis, based on your current tendering process, you one-on-one address these challenges that or these issues that are raised with persons who are engaging in procurement process?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Tell me something. This updated procurement policy, and forgive me, I didn't get a chance to look at the appendix that you all submitted because it was submitted only yesterday, a good bit of appendices, and I didn't get to looking at that. But could you tell me that if now your procurement policies includes standardized bidding documents for various types of procurement?
The nature of the bidding document or the contents will depend on, of course, the projects that we are putting out tenders for.
Construction.
What we have, however, and we did include it as an appendix. Yes, let me just see if I can guide you to which appendix that is. M? Yes, appendix M. We would have provided a breakdown of the types of evaluation criteria we use for various projects. So while the content may differ on various parts, so if there are groups of projects that are similar in nature, we have criteria that will allow some sort of standard from the organization in terms of the evaluation of our bids.
Okay. So tell me something, with the updating of the procurement law, and you all indicated that you all have been engaging with the Office of the Procurement Regulator, is that correct?
But the question was if we have done internal reviews by our senior management, and yes, we have been conducting reviews.
Okay, so with respect to the Office of the Procurement Regulator, has any consultations been taking place to streamline the procurement policies that exist within UDeCOTT?
Well, we have appointed an internal officer to be the liaison. So depending on the questions asked by OPR, we provide them with the information on an as-needed basis.
Okay, but in terms of creating any form of standardization and stuff with what, based on OPR's recommendation, that is not yet being done.
UDeCOTT?
Yes, we're here. Could you just repeat the question so we make sure we're answering?
Right. So my question is that you all have been liaising with OPR to some extent. My question is, if you all are liaising with OPR, has the consultation between you and OPR been any way related to standardizing any sort of procurement documents that is being used to procure services, goods and services by UDeCOTT?
The extent of the discussions with the OPR have not gone to the point of standardizing our documents. However, UDeCOTT has its own standardized documents, which we use. And of course, as we review it, we make sure that we are in compliance with where the OPR intends to go. So as the OPR manages their portfolio, as they reach out to us for information, we provide information to them.
And may I just add that in terms of standardizing, what the CEO would have shared, there was standardized evaluation procedure for certain groups of projects. But in terms of standardized bid documents, it is a bit difficult to do that based on the complexity and the scope of different projects. So we have large projects that we undertake to very small projects. We go from community centers to the Red House. It would be difficult to standardize those documents. But in terms of contract document that we would follow, I mean, we would follow the FIDIC contracts, which are standard documents. But in terms of the scope, well, we can't standardize the scope. But we do try to, as much as possible, we try to standardize because it makes work easy for us.
Okay. I wouldn't belabor the procurement issue. Because there are several other areas that I would like to raise. So I would like to move to the notes to the consolidated financial statements. On page 44 of the financial statement, that note on borrowings. And I see that in 2014 and 2015, you all indicated that the maturity of borrowing that is more than 1 year was valued at $8 billion. Could you give us an updated figure for that borrowing?
The document that you are reading from is which document currently?
The financial statement, the audit, just let me go all the way to the top. I have multiple documents open here, so just give me a second. The consolidated financial statements of Urban Development Corporation of Trinidad and Tobago Limited, December 31st, 2015. Presented in Trinidad and Tobago dollars. It's by KPMG, and I'm looking at note 18, which is on page 44 of the document.
Can we ask that we be allowed to present a written response to that question?
Could you repeat, please?
Yes, we're asking if we would be allowed to submit a written response to that question.
Yes, you can. Well, then in that case, I have several questions in this area. So maybe let me ask all the questions and you tell me which ones you need to submit in writing. So with respect to the $8 billion, I would like to know what the updated figure is as of today. Also, under note 18, you all indicated that there are several areas where U.S. borrowing took place. That is with Citibank, $340,000, FCB, USD facility, $65,000, and Barclays, a US $375 million. Could you advise on the status of repayment of those loans?
Yes, those are questions. If you provide it to us, we will provide responses in writing.
Okay. All right. Well, then a general question about the borrowing then. In the audited report, in the consolidated financial statements, mention was made about the foreign currency risk. And the foreign currency risk is valued at $2.6 billion. Could you elaborate on this foreign currency risk for the listening public?
Yes, that is also a question we wish to have presented in writing.
Okay, all right. Mr. Chair, I would pause here for now. I have other questions, but I know there may be other members who would have questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mrs. Buell. I'll ask Laurel Lezama Singh, if you have any questions.
Thanks very much, Chairman. Thank you very much, and good morning again to all present. Many of the things I had questions about have been raised already or answered in supplemental questions. However, I just have two very, very basic things. Firstly, I want to thank UDeCOTT for its robust program of work, over the past several years in development of the country. I think UDeCOTT plays a substantial role in our overall development here in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm looking at the inquiry proposal in the responses from UDeCOTT on page 8, the staff's turnover rate for the past 5 years, and I looked at the Appendix G, which shows that the turnover has vacillated between 30 and 20%, but it's just around 20% right now. And I also note that there has been a significant increase in the number of employees, probably just about 70% increase in employees over that period. My question is that cause for concern, and have there been any negative effects insofar as the staff turnover? And that's my first question to UDeCOTT.
Yes, UDeCOTT.
Let me make sure I understand the question. You would like to know whether the turnover rate has had any negative impact on our delivery?
For the most part, yes. And if you are concerned about the turnover percentage.
It has had a negative impact. Some of these are natural reflection of contracts. Persons may leave the organization, but through our recruitment process, we do replace as needed to make sure that our projects are adequately staffed to be able to effectively deliver on our mandates.
So you are satisfied, therefore, and you don't have any real concerns?
No.
No, good. Okay, and then my second question, just if you turn to page 14, in your response, how frequent were project evaluations conducted by the corporation and what were the lessons? And my question is, I know you said that they're done on an individual basis, project-specific basis, but have you found in your assessments after that there were any commonalities that showed any major, I know that you have the weaknesses and everything, but any major thing that is cause for concern for you insofar as your project evaluations and at the end of your projects and your ongoing evaluations as well?
As stated in the same question 7 on page 14, if we look at all the projects, yes, it is one-on-one, but the similar areas would be the scope, change, and cost management. Those are some of the similarities in the issues that we have found. And if you go one page backward to page 13 and page 12, or 1 and 2 pages backward, we would have identified some of the steps that we would have taken to rectify some of those areas. So, for example, where we have the scope management, where from time to time there may be an addition by the client, or due to some unforeseen circumstance, we had to change the scope. To rectify that, we now have increased consultation with our clients to ensure that from the front end, the user brief is adequately developed. So we were able to reduce some of those issues that we were having. The same would apply for the cost management and change management. It takes a lot of effort on the front end to make sure that even the BOQs we put out, the scope is wide enough and detailed enough so that we don't have the cost creep and the changes happening and the scope creep happening. So those are really some of the commonalities, but steps have been put in place to try to minimize those risks.
Good. And you're satisfied with the progress that you're making thus far?
Yeah.
Chairman, that's it for me.
All right, thank you very much. May I ask Mr. Keith Scotland if he has any questions? If not, may I ask Mr. Roshan Parry to intervene at this time? Mr. Parry?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Once again, my apologies for my late arrival at the hearing today. Good morning to the team at UDeCOTT and the other guests who are here with us. I want to commend UDeCOTT as well for the contribution that, as a state enterprise, that they've made to the development of the Republic. And I also want to commend UDeCOTT on the responses that were given to this query, because although voluminous in nature, I thought that the fact that every question was answered, and in my belief to the fullest, I want to commend UDeCOTT for that. The other thing I noticed that in one of the responses where you were asked to provide your SWOT analysis, I also felt that your responses were very honest, some of them self-inflicting, which I think that it shows the honesty in your responses. And I really feel that UDeCOTT has a wonderful opportunity to strengthen whatever weaknesses that the organization may have. So with that out of the way, there are just two areas that I wanted to comment on because members before has asked quite a bit of questions, and I think we've gotten some very good responses so far. I just want to ask in terms of the lateness of these financial reportings. I know members would have spoken about the delays in 7, 8, 9, and then the lumping together of 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. And then we have some work in progress for 16, 17, 18, 19, and so on. My question is, what was the impact of not having that functioning or fully functioning auditing committee with this? From what I understand, there were some challenges getting a senior internal auditor. How much did that play in creating the delays in getting these audited reports ready for submission?
The position of the senior internal auditor had no impact on the financial statements as our statements are audited externally. So the role of the internal auditor would not have impacted.
So that had absolutely no influence on any of those financial statements.
Minimal effect. Minimal.
Okay, but yeah, but let me ask you this: as a state enterprise, that it's, from what I assume, it's a profit-making enterprise. I'm assuming that you pay taxes to the Board of Inland Revenue and so on, and most, if not all, private organizations are mandated, and if I were to say, hands are ringed to ensure that you have statements submitted to the Board of Inland Revenue in a timely fashion. Why would agencies like yours have such a long delay between those statements ready? Because I'm assuming those statements would be used to submit to the Board of Inland Revenue for taxes and so on. How does that play out in terms of submissions to the BIR and so on?
I would ask the Divisional Manager of Finance to support in answering that question.
Yes, good morning, Madam. Yes, it has an impact, but as what we also use, we have management accounts that are prepared on a monthly basis and presented to our committees for review. So in that interest, we use our internal management accounts so they'll be able to pay all of our statutory requirements as they fall due.
So as of today, UDeCOTT is up to date with all its fiduciary responsibility to the state in terms of taxes and so on.
Yes, considering VAT and those others and the others, as you know, business levy agreement, yes, we are up to the concerning the income tax that you mentioned before, on those years that profits were not made, you would understand there was not a need to be able to pay those. Thank you.
But although no profits are made, the submissions to the Board of Inland Revenue would have been made based on the management reports rather than the final audited statements.
Yes, so that is a correct statement.
Okay, all right. So I'll just leave that there for a while. The other area that I wanted to make a comment on, and perhaps a couple questions, it comes back down to the role of UDeCOTT and the important role that you play in the state's developmental program. And I heard a question from one of my colleagues before concerning the software that is used to assist with the accounting and so on, which is Microsoft Dynamics, and the acquisition and implementation from 2010 onwards, and then an update in 2018, if I heard correct. And I'm a bit puzzled that an agency, an enterprise like UDeCOTT, which I assume it's on the cutting edge of technology, you are driving some of the newest and most modern development projects on the island. Having some background in ICT and an understanding of Microsoft Dynamics as well, I find it hard to believe that it's taken us 8 to 10 years to fully implement a piece of software that is such a critical tool in terms of getting us to a place where we can present these accounting reports. And not only that the reports are there for the viewing of Parliament, but in terms of your own internal management process and decision-making processes, I know Microsoft Dynamics has a lot of that feature. So it comes back down here. My question comes out of the SWOT analysis that you submitted. And what jumped out at me, I know Senator Dana Rising spoke on the external views from the external stakeholders in terms of a few areas. But what was glaring to me in terms of the internal stakeholders, which I assume are your employees, I was taken aback by the commentary under the areas of weaknesses, right? And I mean, if it goes on, if you have the document in front of you, page 1, under weaknesses, especially from your internal stakeholders, you have issues where there is no mission clarity, unclear mandates. You have some of your internal stakeholders complaining about limited autonomy, undue influence. One group is saying we don't have authority, no motivation or impetus to push forward. Under cultural elements, you have the environment is cold, it is not friendly. Culture of passing the buck and not taking responsibility. No open forum for staff interaction. No innovation because people's ideas get shut down. Now, page 2 has another list of items from your internal stakeholders as well. Now, I say that with the understanding that if the employees who are the engine of your organization sees the organization in that light, then it is not surprising to me that tasks would be hampered. And one of the tasks will be working on these reports, these statements, these financial reports, and so on. These things would not have developed overnight. It would have been, that environment would have been created over some time. As CEO, because I'm thinking the acting CEO is there with us today, and perhaps your team, what urgent remedial work that you think or that is being done at this time, or you think that can take that can be done in the short future to remedy some of those concerns that were listed in the SWOT analysis, taking note that we are going into a very difficult period in the economy in this country. And I think the work of UDeCOTT is going to be more critical, more important in driving our national development. How do we bridge those gaps that have been identified in the SWOT analysis that you have presented to this committee?
All right, well, this SWOT analysis, you recall, influenced the strategic plan that was established in 2016 to 2020. So this environment is the staff's view of what existed pre that strategic plan that was implemented. Since then, we have the general staff meeting that we have every quarter. We have wellness committees. We have the suggestion box. We now have an employee newsletter where we feature our employees. So there are new news. So there are a series of initiatives where we have reached out to staff so they feel that their voice is heard and that they are part and parcel. In terms of, you would see some areas mentioned the vision and mission. The vision and mission is posted on the walls in the organization. So at any turn you make, you can see this is what we stand for. These are the values. So there have been several initiatives since these areas of weaknesses were identified. And of course, as we make progress with that, we will continue to roll out even further initiatives through our HR and Corpcom unit to buy staff confidence within the organization.
So I'm thinking if you were to do back a SWOT analysis in 2021, a lot of these areas that were identified in this particular report here may no longer be relevant, and it may now be in the strength box in 2021.
Yes.
Is that a fair statement?
Yes. Yes, it is fair.
Okay. Do you have a figure in terms? I noticed in 2016, the accounts receivable for UDeCOTT was a little over $500 million. Has that figure changed considerably? Do you have the current figure right now in terms of the accounts receivable for UDeCOTT?
Yes, UDeCOTT.
Would you be so grateful to allow us to submit that in writing to the committee, the current receivable?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. The follow-up question to that is that I'm looking at the accounts receivable report from 2015, and I noticed that your client listing is about over 100 strong. And taking note of so many agencies of the state that owes you a substantial amount of money, and I know that in itself impacts your operation even internally in terms of how you manage your business. Has there been any sort of curtailing or cutting of the amount of agencies that are ending up at an accounts receivable position with you? Have you done anything to reduce that amount of monies that are owing to you since 2015 in terms of different types of strategies, different types of arrangement? Have anything like that been considered so far?
Yes, well, one, UDeCOTT operates based on the mandates given by the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And therefore, we continue to deliver, notwithstanding the challenges that we have in terms of monies owing. What we have done, however, we have strengthened our internal processes. So there's more communication with our clients to get the monies paid to us. We put a lot more in writing. We keep them up to date where we are with the projects. We let them know in the absence of payment the impact some of it may have. So there is more dialogue, which allows us to get some releases coming to us to maintain our delivery on the projects.
And last question, Mr. Chair, before we go. UDeCOTT is not a transactional type operation. I noticed that you ventured into some revenue generation activities a couple of years ago, one being the Maracas, where there was an internal audit done that Maracas Beach facility. So I want to ask, do you have many of those type of revenue generation activities? And outside of that, from the construction side, when you are mandated to build a hospital, build a school, how do you make money to turn a profit? In that part, I could understand from the revenue generation component, like the car parks and so on, you can make money easily there. But how do you turn a profit when you have to build a hospital or a school? I mean, just briefly, if you can just enlighten me on how that happens.
Well, what we earn on our construction projects, our project management fees, and of course on the facilities side, there are the facilities fees. Those fees are actually capped. That is approved through cabinet, and our fees stand at 4.5% for project management and for about 7% for facilities management.
Right.
Okay, so basically that fee really is what pays your staff and the other operational items.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, right. Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Parry.
Mr. Chairman.
I'd like to recognize Mr. Keith Scotland at this time.
Chairman, I just have one. I'm sorry, when you called upon me, we lost connectivity.
Right.
Chairman, my question to UDeCOTT, and it may be directed to someone in human resource. Why is it that an entity such as UDeCOTT, why is it that such an entity is finding challenges to be fully staffed? And would they agree with us, Chair, that it is important for an entity of that significance to have a full complement of staff? And why is that a recurring issue, the issue of staffing at UDeCOTT? Can we get an answer to that, please? Respectfully, through you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. UDeCOTT?
Just give us a minute to consult and we will respond.
Yes, UDeCOTT?
Yes. Right, but we won't say that we have a difficulty. Yes, you would have seen in our report, we had some difficulty with specific areas. So you had a senior internal auditor, which we now have on board. But overall, if you look at our appendix I, in terms of UDeCOTT staffing numbers for 2014 to 2019, let's look at 2019. We have 365 positions and 322 that are actually employed. So the variance is not quite wide, and what we had was sufficient for the projects that we had and what we were required to do. So in any organization, as in UDeCOTT, yes, there is a figure that optimal we will work with. However, what we do is employ based on our needs. So the staff that we have sufficiently covers what is required of the organization to achieve.
Chairman, if that is UDeCOTT, but you will appreciate that based on your own projection for plenary, for a full complement, you are more than 10% short. You will agree with me. You are saying that you can operate at that percentage capacity of staffing adequately? Chairman?
Yes, UDeCOTT?
Yes, so I'm going to pass to my Senior Manager of Human Resources just to close on that question.
Good morning, Mr. Scotland. In terms of the additional staffing, when our organizational structure takes into account future manpower forecasting, at the point in time, we would fill positions as the head of department request. The 10% is normally like a contingency in case we get additional projects, because we are primarily a project-based company. So as projects are added on, then we would increase our staffing correspondingly. Thank you.
Chairman, I am sanguine with the answer.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Scotland. I think Amrita Dionarine wanted to raise a follow-up.
Thank you, Chair. I have some follow-up questions. Now, with respect to project management, I saw that you all indicated that you all have some major challenges when it comes to scope management, cost management, and change management. Now, could you all elaborate? I know you all provided an explanation in your submissions, but could you all provide an explanation on the type of challenges you all face when it comes to scope, cost, and change management, please?
Okay, so let me try to offer up an answer as the CEO just stepped off a little while. As you could appreciate, we have many client ministries that will require services from us. So in terms of scope management, what you find sometimes is as the project is being conceived, you have one group of parties that may be involved in producing or aiding in producing the scope. But then as the project now starts working, things start to go down in the ground, foundation, and so you may find that there's a reassessment of what the needs are. And so sometimes they come to us with scope changes. And some of these scope changes may result in scope creep in terms of an increased scope. And with an increased scope, we have increased cost. So they may make demands on us, and we would have to negotiate with them in terms of what the original budget was. And sometimes we get them to hold, sometimes they are willing to hold, but we continuously working with them, as it is working with any client. So that's really where it is. The scope creep and cost creep is really around what the needs of the client are and how the needs of the client changes as the project proceeds towards completion.
Okay, so then my follow-up question to that then is, how frequently does this happen?
How frequently does it happen? Probably let the CEO speak on that, but I mean, you would appreciate that any client, once they start realizing that they're getting what they want, and if I may say so myself, that it's being given at such a high quality, they may want to increase the scope. So it happens pretty often, right? But again, we always have to negotiate and understand the space that we operate in with regards to the budget. So we always working to keep the scope at bay or keep it within the bounds of the original scope, right? So, yeah.
All right, Mrs. Dinarine, we only have a few more minutes before we conclude because of another commitment. So could I ask you to submit the other questions
in writing?
In writing? I just want to ask Mr. Sweet from the Office of the Prime Minister the following questions, and he can place them in writing, or he can give us a summary and then place them in writing. Mr. Sweet, are you there?
Yes, Chair, I'm listening.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, how does the project management advisor, well, that is Mr. Gardner I'm talking about here, and you can probably, if you wish to answer, or you wish to ask him to intervene. And that question has to do with, how does the project management advisor monitor the implementation of projects? The second one I'd like to propose is what is the role of the permanent secretary in the monitoring of the implementation of projects? The third area I'd like to have clarified is what is the reporting relationship between the project management advisor and the permanent secretary? And the final area I'd like to have clarified is how is the performance of the project management advisor assessed? So, Mr. Sweet, between your good self and the project management advisor, could you provide us with some clarity?
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. If I may, I'll probably put some of the questions, well, my answer may overlap with the questions on how I explain. And I would start first by saying that the role of the project management advisor was in initial stages and still mainly as it exists now was to assist the Office of the Prime Minister. And so you'll find that the project management advisor is principally advising the role of projects in which the Office of the Prime Minister has a role in terms of the project. For instance, the restoration projects, which would have included the heritage styles like Stallmeyer, Whitehall, the President House, Parliament, etc. The Office of the Prime Minister would have been the client for UDeCOTT. So the project management advisor would have been advising the permanent secretary on the progress of the reports. He would head the unit within the Office of the Prime Minister. And as the project proceeds and UDeCOTT submits invoices, they would review the invoices. They visit the site, so they would be able to match the invoices with the actual work taking place on site and be able to say, okay, we are satisfied with this invoice and we are ready to pay. So that's the role and the relationship of the project manager and the permanent secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister. The assessment of his role is really how are we able to manage the projects that the Office of the Prime Minister has responsibility for in terms of keeping the project on time and on cost. And those are sort of like the basic or the broad metrics that we use to evaluate the progress. In terms of the other projects, remember that UDeCOTT, when we're talking about the liability, the accounts receivable, you would understand that they have many clients in the various fields of health, national security, community development, judiciary, sport. Those ministries and departments would have their own project units, and they have to liaise with UDeCOTT in making sure that their projects are being delivered on time. But because of, I suppose we tap into Mr. Gardner's experience that he brought with the portfolio, you would find that some of the projects, which are very broad in scope and impact many stakeholders, like the San Fernando Water Project, etc., or there may be particular projects that ministries may meet out to. He and his staff would actually go to the site, visit the projects, meet with UDeCOTT staff, sometimes meet with the UDeCOTT and the contractors to try and look at where there are bottlenecks or various issues that need resolving. I don't know if I answered your question sufficiently there.
All right. Well, what I would say, Mr. Sweet, is that whatever follow-up we would have as a committee, we will commit those into writing, and we will communicate same to you for the appropriate responses. I think we are running out of time at this time, and I would like to put the committee on notice, and all the members, the officials who are present, officials from the Ministry of Finance, Office of the Prime Minister, and UDeCOTT, that those areas that we are unable to pursue because of a time constraint, we will put it in writing and communicate same to the various officials. At this time, I'd like to, on behalf of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee, I would like to sincerely thank the officials from the Ministry of Finance, Investment Division, the Office of the Prime Minister, the Urban Development Corporation of Trinidad and Tobago, of course, members of our committee, and the viewing and listening audience for tuning in to this very important exercise. At this time, I'd like to thank again all the officials from the various agencies that are here, and to, at this time, excuse all of you. I will suspend temporarily while we excuse all of the officials, and I ask all members to stay tuned. We'll just resume for a few moments, and then we will conclude formally. So the officials from UDeCOTT, Ministry of Finance, as well as the Office of the Prime Minister, you are now excused. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.